We still have a couple of minutes. How's it going, Justin?
Doing good. How are you guys?
Doing okay. Are you able to get into PrimeGov?
I think I am in.
Yes, sir. You are connected to PrimeGov.
Okay, perfect.
So Mark, we have all 6 of our committee members that are on the call. Are they all in PrimeGov right now?
Yes, they are all in PrimeGov.
Okay, so Chair, we've got 6 currently. We're just missing 1, but we clearly have a quorum. So whenever your 9:30 chime sounds, you are free to start the meeting.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I show all 7 members in PrimeGov.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the April 15th meeting of the Downtown Design Review Committee. This meeting is being held by video conference. My name is Tony Blatt, and I am the chair of the committee. No physical location will be provided for the DDRC meeting. The meeting will instead be live streamed from remote locations. We want to request that everyone joining us today, except committee members, keep your microphone muted until you are called on to speak. As instructed in the agenda, those who called or emailed us in advance to let us know your name, contact number, and agenda item you wish to speak about will be recognized first. Before the DDRC votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. When your name is called, you'll need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone or pressing the unmute icon on your computer. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. When I ask if anyone from the public wants to speak on an item and you did not provide your information in advance of the meeting, please raise your hand by pressing *9 on your phone or select the raise hand icon on your computer. When your name is called, you'll need to unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone or pressing the unmute icon on your computer. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. For anyone speaking today, including committee members, please identify yourself when you begin to speak. Citizens may address the committee on agenda items by responding to the chair's call for speakers during discussion on each item. All comments must be relevant to the item. The chair or presiding officer may, in his or her discretion, prohibit a person from addressing the committee and or remove that person from the video conference if that person commits any disorderly or disruptive behavior, which includes, without limitation, any of the following: speaking without being recognized by the chair or presiding officer, continuing to speak after notice that the speaker's allotted time has expired, presenting comments or material not relevant to the item under discussion, failing to comply with lawful instructions of the chair or presiding officer, engaging in other contact, activity, or speech that delays, disrupts, or interferes with the effective or timely conduct of the meeting. Citizens cannot submit documents via video conference meetings. If we lose our connection for this meeting, the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 30 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled Downtown Design Review Committee meeting on Thursday, May 20th at 9:30 a.m. by video conference. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then click on an agenda item and the relevant documents will come up below that item. Additionally, I'd like to welcome 2 new members today, Kayla Copeland and Justin Brennan. Mark, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee Member Blatt.
Present.
Committee Member Bates.
Present.
Committee Member Brannan.
Present.
Committee Member Copeland.
Present.
Committee Member Jones. Committee Member Jones. Committee Member Sarter,
Present.
Committee Member Trujillo.
Present.
That completes the roll call, Mr. Chair. You have quorum.
Thank you very much. So item number 2 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. The minutes are included in the packets that you received online. If there are any questions or comments on the minutes, I'll accept them now. And if absent of any of those, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the minutes.
Motion by Bates
I'll second. Rosa
Second by-
Trujillo.
and a second by Trujillo. If all those in favor will vote in PrimeGov. If anybody cannot see the Prime, perfect.
Hang on just one second. Mark, did it actually show the votes or is the only thing that came up it said pass?
No, the votes actually showed.
Okay.
The motion
It must have been so fast I didn't see it. I just wanted to make
It
sure
went pretty quick, yes.
that legally we're fine. So we need to try and, if possible, keep that up there a little longer so people see. So that was a 6-0 motion pass?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Very good. So item number 3 is cases withdrawn, and there are none. Item 4 is continuance requests, and there are no items. Item 5 is the consent docket. We have no items on the consent docket. Item 6 is cases for individual consideration. And 6A is DTCA-21-00018 at 501 South Walker Avenue. Laura, would you like to introduce this case?
Thank you. Laura Griggs, Planning Department. The 2 cases on the agenda today are within the same block. Most people are probably familiar with that block because of the business Blumenthal's that's been there for quite some time. And so the first one we're talking about, and on this slide, we'll pause here for a minute. We're dealing with the first 2 buildings, which I'm showing as HP 71 and HP 72. The next case we're going to talk about is the last building, which is HP 73. Those numbers are referring to the historic survey numbers that I've referenced in the staff report. And so building 72 was constructed in 1950 and building number 71 was constructed in 1966. The phase 4 of the intensive level survey of downtown indicates that both of these buildings are individually eligible for the National Register under criteria A commerce. This block does not fall within an identified historic or proposed historic district. You might recall, some of you have been on here for a while, and there to the south and to the west of here is a couple of proposed historic districts where we've had a significant amount of demolition on older single-family residential homes. And staff provided information that was included in historic survey as well as the demolition guidelines. And I'll stress that they're guidelines, they are not regulations. Most of you are probably familiar with the Strawberry Fields project. It's been out there now for a few years. To date, we haven't had any building constructed yet, but this block is located within the overall confines of Strawberry Fields. Staff is providing this information to you, and if you want to go ahead and go on down to, I think it was slide 9 and 10, Cameron, on this one. So this shows the entire block. So we're currently dealing with the top one, 18, and you can see that blue, which is that kind of that northeast corner of the block. And the next one we're going to deal with, although there are 3 individual squares, is literally the rest of the block with the exception of the far northwest corner, which is not included in this demolition at all. And then if you can go on to the next one, Cameron. So that block you can see outlined in green in the middle, and kind of gives you a perspective on where it falls with all the other demolitions that have occurred, which are the X's. And what this shows is that one that is not included that I referenced, which is in the northwest corner, that is structure number 69. And this survey does not reflect all the structures, which is a little confusing, but the ones that we're currently talking about is actually 71 and 72 that you can see on there. And staff actually includes in our information that you can consider any of the demolition criteria, as well as any of the purpose and intent statements, which we included. And as I referenced, this is part of Strawberry Fields' overall development area, but we currently have no specific redevelopment before us for consideration. But the Pat Salome, who is the developer for Strawberry Fields, is available today. She has her, I'll call it her architect and development team on the call today that can answer questions. And I see one name that I failed to put the item number in front of. So we have several people, Mr. Chair, that are here representing this application to speak. Does the committee and staff is recommending approval of this application? Does the committee have any questions for me before I let you know that we have Charles Foster, Michael, and I'm going to mess your name up and I really apologize, Freebell, on the call today representing the project. Mr. Chair, is there any questions for staff?
Does the committee have any questions for staff before the owner presents? Okay. So the applicant is present. Would the applicant like to speak?
Yeah, the applicant, Pat Salome, is in the background of one of those calls. I will acknowledge that a presentation was sent to me this morning, but we are unable to allow that to be shown because of the time frame. I needed that way in advance of being able to show that. So I apologize for any misunderstanding with the architect on that. So whoever was wanting to speak, if you could please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, I'm Pat Salome, and I'm going to turn this over to Charles Foster and our architect for any questions you may have. They can tell you about our development and why we want to demo this block. Charles?
Hi, everyone. Charles Foster here. We also have our architect from CRTKO, Michael Freeblay, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And this is Michael Freebley. I'm a senior associate with CRTKL out of Dallas, Texas, the architecture firm responsible for Strawberry Fields and working in collaboration with them.
Does the committee have any questions for the applicant? I'd personally like to hear just maybe a 50,000 foot level view of what is planned for this site. I realize we're talking about demolishing structures on a site that we haven't yet seen, although we know that there's an imminent design coming forward. But could there be a little bit of narrative about what the plan is for this particular property with what you feel like you can disclose at this time?
Michael?
Sure, I can take that.
Okay.
Well, Strawberry Fields is very much about establishing sort of the southern edge of downtown Oklahoma City. And what you've seen in a lot of the master planning documents is how it really harnesses and connects into Oklahoma City overall, as well as Scissortail Park, and also the transit that feeds into the site and new modes of transit too. But But as we establish kind of larger portion of the southern portion of Oklahoma City, it really becomes then, as we establish the blocks, how do we start to create a sense of community within Strawberry Fields? So the site that we are looking at today is part of what we're calling the community heart. What we see on this site is a mixed use development. Within the documents that we'll show you in the future, we look at a hotel, some entertainment, as well as some retail, roughly covering about 60% of the site. But then at the heart of it being a green space and public space that gives back to the density of the community that we'll establish over time within Strawberry Fields. And this is really hallmark to, and if you view the master plan of Strawberry Fields, it's really hallmark to how we see each block having a sense of development character, a sense of diversity that relates to creating a vibrant urban environment, but at the same time, opportunities to give back to the community through the spaces that we create around our buildings, as well as how we respond to things such as infrastructure, parking, as well as the connectivity. So for this site specifically, we really see it being indicative of all the pieces of Strawberry Fields coming together, and a piece that really will support development in this portion of the city, as well as development moving forward around the site.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I actually do have a question for staff. There was mention of a document that was recently sent that was not shared in time to view within this meeting. But if there are public documents that are available online, are those admissible?
The email I was referring to was received at 9:21 this morning, which is why I said I was unable to share that one. It is my understanding that Strawberry Fields has a website, and they have some information on that website. I don't know what legal direction would be as far as being able to show any of that, since I didn't include any of that in my packet.
Well, I'm not necessarily pushing for it. I'm more asking the question. It may be useful for the public at this point if the development team could let people know where that information is, where they can find it, so that it's known that it's out there, it's accessible, where to find it, if people want to find more information on what the development's been, how the development's been developed so far, the master plan.
So I'll just ask a question of Susan Randall. Is it okay if they say what the website is that people can go to see this information?
Sure, they can, if they agree to do that, that's fine. I also would say that under the Open Meetings Act, we can share stuff if we get it, as long as we upload it immediately afterwards to our website. So I don't know if there's a way, I don't know that you can put it on now, but I was just going to tell you that you can do that as long as it's made available on our website after the, immediately after the meeting.
So my question right now will be for Cameron. This was sent to me in an email. If I sent this to you, if I forward this email to you, would you be able to, I think it's a PowerPoint. I'm not really sure because I haven't looked at it. Would you be able to share that on the screen, Cameron?
Yeah, I should be able to make that work. I may hide my screen for a moment just to make sure.
Yeah, and I'm going to forward it to you, and then I'm going to go step into Cameron's office so that I can look at it. So if you all will give us just a couple of minutes, please.
while we're waiting, I'll go ahead and ask, is there anybody else on the call that wishes in the public, or are there any other commission members that wish to have a question asked about this particular project or this particular application?
Hi, Anthony. I think I would ask some questions about the park space and how they are planning to basically engage the street and the community around it. Hopefully this presentation will help.
I think this presentation is going to answer a lot of questions. I'm so glad. Thanks for Laura and Cameron for showing this. Michael, do you want to go through the presentation real quick?
Yeah, happy to take you through, and yeah, I'll just ask the team if you could flip pages as I kind of called them out to you. But what we're really calling this is the community heart at Strawberry Fields. It's really been a hallmark piece of the master plan development since the very beginning. If you want to go to the next page. I've got a little delay on my screen, so I apologize if I'm kind of falling a little bit behind here. But when we talk about Strawberry Fields, it really becomes about the connectivity to the region as being the thing that really starts to inform why this master plan is important to Oklahoma City, whether it's to economic development, whether it's to proximity of being able to walk to all the assets in Oklahoma City, but above all, enjoying all the things that really have made Oklahoma City a beautiful place, from the way that we express community to the landmarks to the transit that's now linking and interlocking the city together. Next page, please. So in some ways, we do see Strawberry Fields as really the center, a new center of everything, but really it's supporting a downtown that's growing in vibrancy on all levels of experience. And you can see within the master plan, it's always been about how does the surrounding city sort of link itself into the site. But as we move forward, specifically with the lot that is outlined there in the red on the top right image, moving more into the community, we start to look at development as a way of establishing community within the project, as well as establishing a new neighborhood within the city. So any further development over time, it really becomes about diversity in building stock, character, program, how infrastructure works itself in the site. And then above all, to your point, Kayla, how public spaces really become opportunities to create vibrancy at the street level and within the neighborhood. So what you see up there in the top right is hospitality program, retail, entertainment, covering about 60% of the lot, using surface parking that is landscaped. So that starts to integrate itself in, using the parking around the site. On-street parking is an opportunity to sort of create vibrancy at the street level, anticipating how mass transit plays a role and linkages out to bus lines and mass transit within the city, and then how landscape plays a very important role as well. Next page. There may be a delay. Okay. So again, creating an active hub and the heart of the community. So something that really becomes a proud, emblematic space of Strawberry Fields. Next page. I may have a delay on my end here. There we go. But all of these developments that we're looking at in Strawberry Fields are really in concert with each other in the way that they speak to the way that we engage the city and engage the community. In this case, 3.35 acres of this site for hotel and entertainment. This is very much a very early on study, but it really becomes about establishing a heart to the community, connected, but also of comfort and of vibrancy that speaks to an urban forward direction for the city. Next page. This just outlines some of the specifics, at least that we've looked at, sort of as a test fit of the site in many ways. But what you can see on the northern site there, again, within kind of a 60% coverage of the site, is a 150 key hotel at 6 stories, having a vibrant amenity space that's atop retail, an entertainment space, whether that's in a retail form or an F&B form. But all this covets itself, or sort of focuses itself around the central green space that we're calling the community heart. And then again, things like parking and connectivity really become landscape integrated, pedestrian friendly focused as it connects to the city. And then finally using, assets around us to really ensure that we're creating a vibrant urban setting, such as not over parking the site, but using surrounding street parking, and then anticipating how mass transit really plays a key role in the site. Should also be of note that we're also looking at this in terms of flexibility too within the site. So parcelization being an important player, knowing that with COVID, with pandemic, with changes in the urban environment, there's a potential that this program could change and shift. And so we see opportunities for flexibility in the way that the site can be developed. Then the southern site is very much a capacity. We do know that there's historic structures on that site, and that's something that we are going to obviously continue to go through the drawing board to understand. But for the northern site, it really becomes sort of how do we create a vibrant connected center to Strawberry Fields? And I think the images will really show the character of space. So if you want to go to the next slide, please. This is the aerial view looking from the southeast in toward the site. But again, as we talk about moving from plan to volume, it becomes about how you start to tie the scale of the buildings into the site. And this is very much not the final outcome that you're looking at, but at least starts to indicate the character of what we would like to establish. So landscape playing an important role, walkability playing an important role. Having active pieces such as the pavilion in the bottom right become assets to the city, sort of a refuge within the city for shade and comfort. Active platforms at night, should there be a concert or community engagement. And then the buildings becoming about the texture of the neighborhood, much like some of the other developments that we looked at in the area. The historic architecture that was on the site, or the heritage that was on the site, actually is informed so what we've done, and we see that still continuing. But that the scale of the buildings as you move up from the street level still create a sense of connection and a sense of scale to a neighborhood that we feel like is really going to be quite vibrant for this portion of the city. Next slide. And just quickly go through the street views. I think these start to show that scale that we were talking about. So this being the corner of Walker and Fifth, really becoming sort of a kind of a central piece within this portion of the city. But we also see opportunities here that, it's uninterrupted street grid, but maybe there's an opportunity to use Fifth Street for events. And this plaza could play a very key role in that. Walker is the main north-south, and so it becomes sort of a spine that this feeds into and starts to respond to in an urban scale. And that the scale of the architecture really steps up in a respectful way, grounded by the landscapes. You're not getting an urban edge that feels cavernous or feels like it's imposing upon the vibrancy of the community. Next page, please. Another image just looking from the south toward the north, having focal points within the space, but again, becoming about the public domain, an active place that will be active throughout the day and throughout the night. Next page, please. As we get to the office, and this is looking toward the southwest, another thing is really talking about diversity and the architectural character. And so one of the things that we've seen throughout Oklahoma City is really how diverse and vibrant the architectural character is. And our intent is really to continue that in a way that is very relatable, regional, but also a bit forward thinking at the same time. Next page. So while this is very early on in the process, we hope that what we're showing you today is really, and it's really indicative of how we see Strawberry Fields creating really another pillar to Oklahoma City's downtown and to Oklahoma City's history. And that really isn't done in a vacuum. We do see it as a space for everyone that's really built and informed by everyone. Very much open to input, but also at the same time, we want to create a space that is elevating the community and the character of the city. And that's what we really envision this site being and playing a central role in doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant by committee members? Kayla, do you have a follow-up to your question?
I do. Thank you. So awesome presentation. That was very helpful. Thanks for sharing. I do have a question about how do you see your park being maintained? Is it public? Is it private? What's your thoughts on that? And then how does your park differ from Scissortail Park that's 1 block away?
Well, I'll turn the maintenance side over to Pat and Charles, but I think in terms of the way that it differs itself from Scissortail is that Scissortail, and it's a great question, Kayla, Scissortail is such a large focal point park within the city of Oklahoma City. And it's beautiful in the way that it allows for these large scales of activity to occur. And there's great pieces that allow that to happen. But what we've seen being filtered into the city becomes a bit more about the urban scale, and that's a different type of character in a way. Something that we found in our work as the pandemic has gone forward is the ability to have access to these smaller scale green spaces because it helps to promote health and wellness. It becomes a great place to connect in public today. And then it also becomes assets, honestly, to the economic vitality of a lot of these programs that you're seeing on the site. So offices are becoming and workplaces are becoming more dependent upon having green space that's accessible. Same with hospitality, same with retail. So the small scale green space, and you see a number of them within the master plan, they've really been kind of a hallmark to it since the beginning. Become the ability to create these connections at a smaller scale. And then at the same time, Oklahoma City and other urban centers having these places within the city become opportunities to sort of break up the urban street grid a bit. They become ways of integrating the landscape so that they become these gathering points within the city. And that's really what we see for this site, is not so much the large scale like Scissortail, but having the opportunities for community gathering and events within a more intimate scale that the architecture supports.
Thank you. Did you want your team members to speak about the maintenance side as well? That was something I was interested in.
Yep, great.
Yeah, Pat and Charles.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you. Yeah, so the maintenance will not be, it'll be privately maintained. Won't be a burden on the city at all. We just see a vision. The park and the green space would just be a percentage of this block where we really have a great vision for this to be an accent to Scissortail. Maybe grab a bite to eat at one of these restaurants, walk a block over and go to the Kings of Leon concert. Things of that nature. So we're excited about this and just the retail area down here to bring more people to Scissortail, to bring more people downtown, to grab a drink, go to the Thunder game. You know, that's kind of one of the many visions for this area. So not any way competing with Scissortail at all, just an accent and another benefit.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
Yes, do you have a anticipated timeline for starting construction on this block?
We're still in the programming phase on that, so I don't want to. It's just with the new landscape with COVID and everything, our timeline got pushed back a little bit, but we're excited to get the demolition done and keep those conversations going. So
We have
So
a
then-
way yet to go there. So we still have to get our infrastructure in place. That's a ways out. What do you think?
yeah, I think
It's hard to say at this point till we get further along with everything. But the demo is going to help the area. It's going to clean up a lot.
Well, I guess then my question is what necessitates demoing these buildings now if we don't even have a construction date on the calendar?
Well, demo would be step one. Plus it's dangerous. The buildings are. We need to clean that up. And we do have a date in phase one, but I'm reluctant to say a date because so many things happen that, I haven't foreseen before, like infrastructure.
Right.
And
it's kind of a chicken and the egg a little bit as far as, we need the infrastructure finalized so to move forward. And then we've been asked, well, you don't even have the buildings demoed yet, so do you need the infrastructure right now? So it's just a little bit of a balancing act, trying to keep everyone satisfied.
This is Laura Griggs from the planning department. I would note that Blumenthal's is no longer operating from any of these buildings on this block. They still are operating on the block to the south of these, but currently these buildings are empty. And one of the things that we're having happen, because it just happened a week and a half ago, just down the street with some vacant buildings, and they ended up on fire. And so we have issues with structures being very difficult to be secured, and they get broken into, and we end up with scenarios where there are fires or other situations happen.
yes.
Are there other groups who are providing some of the infrastructure for the sites that are not under your control? Or when you say you're awaiting infrastructure to be installed, is that from third-party groups?
Yes.
Or is that as a part of your overall development package?
What would you say about it?
Yeah, there's some infrastructure that we're waiting for the city to install. We've got part of it is part of our plan, but we're working with the city to finalize all the infrastructure.
That answered my question. That I understand what happens when you've got a lot of moving parts. Okay. Any other questions or comments relative to the application of the presentation?
And Chair, there is someone on the call that I don't recognize the name, so if we don't forget to ask if there's anybody else that wants to speak that might not be with the development team.
I'll offer that up at this moment. If there is anybody else on the call who wishes to speak on this, please let staff know so that you can be recognized and then unmuted. Are there any other committee members who have comments?
I'll just, for general discussion, say that I'm on the fence here without having a sight line to actually constructing on the site. I understand that vacant buildings create management issues with regard to security, but I should note that the land use plan and the master plan, the presentation, everything was very nice, and I'm very supportive of the overall vision and the direction for this area. But at a individual scale, when we're talking about these buildings individually, we're talking about them with regard to demoing them. I would feel more comfortable approving a demolition knowing that construction was not that far behind. I think when we're talking about demolition and we look at how the guidelines are written, it's, to me, there needs to be a strong justification made to demo, and I don't want to get into a point where we demo these buildings and then things change. So having a construction, a line of sight of construction would make me more comfortable approving the demolition.
Yeah, we totally understand that. In our mind, it's demolition is just the next step. And also from a safety standpoint, from a beautification standpoint, I was actually drove around these buildings this morning on my way in, and I just totally thank you, Mr. Bates, for those considerations and concerns. In my opinion, it's easier to keep an empty lot safe and secure and problem-free than an old vacant building with a lot of graffiti and safety concerns. So, you bring up some good points. I just think it's easier for the city, we have visitors coming into Scissortail all the time, coming into the new Omni, and a nice clean lot is a better look than what's currently there.
Could you speak in terms of the phasing of the overall development? Is this, talking about this block as a heart of the city, is this really phase one, or do you foresee other blocks being developed first and this is later in the overall timeline of the whole development?
Yeah, great question. I think this is kind of phase 1B. We're in development on the condo project. That's 1 block away, and that's the furthest development that we have going, and this is next in line. So it's kind of, we want to, when there are residents in the area, we want to have the retail for them, and that's driving this. So it's not first in line, but it's not 1 or 2. It's more like a 1B.
This is Laura Griggs from the planning department. Can you clarify the condo project, or is this the block that's up at Oklahoma City Boulevard and Walker, that building that was in the paper recently, or are you talking about the block where the old Goodwill building was?
The old Goodwill site.
Okay, thank you.
We have 3 major focus: the Goodwill site, the Lucy site, and this site.
And how does the structure in the northwest corner of this site fit into the overall plan? Is that something that's simply not acquired yet, or something that would potentially be maintained? It seems to be the one piece of this block not within these 2 applications, and
we're under litigation on that right now.
But the intent is, what is the intent with that lot? with regard to the overall plan?
We think we'll settle with the guy and acquire the lot. We're working on that.
And then, Pat, based on the presentation we just saw, your plans are to demolish that old church or move it or something? Because it was.
Well, that church is, yeah, that's not a historical. It's, you know, the other one is in the other block, but this one is not. And yes, we will demolish it.
Okay.
It's, I think the city has already told him he needs to demolish it now. Haven't they?
Well, that would not be coming from our department.
Okay.
It's probably a code enforcement case since it is all boarded up.
Yeah.
But I am not aware that it has gone to council. I don't believe it's been declared dilapidated, but I could be wrong.
Okay. I could be wrong about that. He mentioned that to me, that the city was trying to get him to tear it down, or told him he had to tear it down or secure it. Maybe that's why it got all boarded up. I don't know.
I do have one more question, actually, if that's okay. Once these buildings are demolished, if there's not quite a defined timeline yet for when construction would start following demolition, what will happen? What are you gonna do to the site basically in the meantime? Is it just gonna stay, you know, a pile of rubble and dirt? Are you going to sod it, or what's your thoughts on that?
It won't be rubble. We want to tear the building down because we believe it will beautify the city, honestly, and the area, because it is just impossible to keep it now. I mean, they break in, we've secured it, and it's a liability. But we could sod it if it's not gonna, but our first thing is to tear it, get the infrastructure in place, and work with CRTKL on a client that they're working with to get them in here and get that part secured. I think that we could safely say 2 years out, but what do you know, I've learned it doesn't always work like what you think. So I'm reluctant to give it a strong date. We do have phasing with our, but so I think it would be safe to say after we got the infrastructure, maybe 1 year. What are your thoughts, Charles?
Yeah, easily within 1 year. And it's going to be a nice clean lot. It won't just be rubble and trash and everything like that. But we're, if you guys know Midwest Raking, they do a great job. It'll be super clean, and we can definitely put sod and keep it looking nice.
Okay.
I think the whole intent of this conversation is just to kind of understand what your goal and direction is at this point, if things go in accordance with what your current expectations are. I know that we get thrown curveballs every day, and sometimes they're pretty big ones that extend over a year plus. But what we have had to face in the past as a committee is demolition that has come in, or prior to us being a committee, is demolition that has come in on structures that are still vacant lots, then we wish we had the buildings back. And so we're looking at this with a little bit of hindsight as our governing voice. So I think that your comment about, the infrastructure on site is going to be supplied by other groups, including but not limited to the city. And after that infrastructure is installed, your goal of having a construction start date of a year following is helpful for us when we're having this discussion. I applaud the presentation. I love it whenever a large land area is viewed holistically and it's integrated into the fabric that the city has already started to establish. And the tree canopy studies that have been done in Oklahoma City and all of the things that have been done with the streetscapes throughout the central business district and Scissortail Park, this is definitely another amenity. I do think that it is helpful whenever we understand the timelines I also think it would be helpful if we could see kind of like what committee member Bates was saying, something that shows what the phases are and kind of a timeline of when those phases would come on board. I don't know if that's something, I don't know if that's something that could be presented. Is there any reason why that the demolition needs to be approved today versus next month with a timeline and a graphic associated with that timeline that we could respond to?
Well,
I'm only asking.
safety, for one.
Safety, sure. Okay. I'm just curious if there was anything specific that would keep that from occurring, and if that would assist in the committee members granting this request.
I think it's, so Tony, to your point, that certainly would be helpful. That said, understanding that this block is, if the applicant stating it's 1B as part of this, dozen block development, that gives me a little more confidence that this is going to happen. If it was block 12 out of 12, I think I'd be a little more hesitant because a lot can happen between now and the last block. So understanding that it's priority 1B it is helpful for me.
Yeah, and I think certainly, I was just going to say a few things about that is, as we've looked at these other sites that we've viewed as being the first phases, we've always shown this community heart as being part of the conversation. In some ways, having a clean slate, ideally gives the mindset that you have a clean slate with which to develop upon. So versus the idea that you're going to have to wait for a demo and you're going to have to wait for a lot of these things to occur. So I think the intent here is to, convey also that there's a site ready to go. And as Pat has mentioned, with the changes that we've experienced, those are also changes too that, if there is a need to sort of fast track a project or something along those lines, you have a site that's able to do so and quite quickly. Also, the need for getting the infrastructure in is going to play an important role. But I think what's very key is that it has been part of the discussion all along with how other developments are going to stitch into it. So it is very much a front and center focus of the project.
With all the information that we've discussed this morning, and considering that we have another item that's going to kind of parallel this one, does any committee member want to frame a motion on the item?
So I might just, this is Laura, Briggs Planning Department. So just as a reminder, and we have 2 new members, so hopefully this is helpful. There was a suggested wording in the staff report. You could support that. You can change that. You could suggest something with conditions. You could go quite the opposite way with it. Or one of the things that I believe the chair was kind of referring to earlier is another option is you could continue it if there is some additional information you're wanting them to provide. And they could provide that for you at your next meeting. So you have all of those options available to you.
In the event that any committee member wanted to author a motion that would include a comment of continuance, we would like to understand if that is something that the applicant would entertain, and we'd want to understand when the next meeting date would be and what the requirements for submissions for that meeting date. And that's only in the event that a motion got authored with that information. But if it's a motion in accordance with our current documents, then that can just be authored the way it is.
Well, I'll say that again, I'm always, I am reluctant to jump into a demolition ahead of what may be necessary, but understanding the security concerns and understanding that this is a priority site within a much larger development, and that the goals of the development go beyond just the site we're talking about. I feel it does help me feel confident that this site will be developed. So with that, I would move to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the downtown design zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
I have a motion by Bates.
Now
Could I-
second.
And a second. Was that by Copeland?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. If everybody would cast their votes in PrimeGov when it comes up.
Mr. Chair, this is Mark, your administrative coordinator. I'm having difficulty with PrimeGov on the vote.
Okay, could we do a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, thank you. Committee Member Blatt,
Aye.
Committee Member Bates,
Aye.
Committee Member Brannon,
Aye.
Committee Member Copeland,
Aye.
Committee Member Jones, Committee Member Sarer,
Aye.
Committee Member Trujillo.
Aye.
That completes the vote, Mr. Chair. The motion passes.
Thank you very much. And so our next item on the agenda is kind of a follow-up. I'm going to wait until this exits off of my PrimeGov stream is still up for motion. Can that be removed? If not, Laura can go ahead. If Laura doesn't mind going ahead and presenting the next case for consideration, DTCA-21-000, and you'll have to tell me if that is 1-8 because it is partially covered.
This is 1-9, which
Thank you.
one we just voted on was 18. This is 19.
Okay.
Which is the majority of the rest of the block. Staff report was very similar. There are one of the buildings was constructed in 1930 and then added onto in 66. And there's one that was constructed in 66. The survey does not actually reflect all of the buildings on the block at all. It does list one of the buildings as being individually eligible, and that's the one you're looking at now. It has that lovely blue fake mansard roof, which is just what I refer to it. Apparently it had been a bottling plant at one point. So repeating some of the stuff from the last time, Blumenthal's operated on this block for decades. We heard the presentation with the last item about the plans for this block. We provided all the information dealing with the guidelines for demolition. And so this building on the corner that you're looking at is known as, I refer to it as HP 73 in Cameron. If you want to go on down, yeah, you can see that. And then the next slide, or one of those slides, actually showed all three of them, but this is at the corner of Southwest 5th and Walker. And it shows that building as being individually eligible on the National Register. And once again, the committee can consider any of the demolition criteria, the purpose and intent statements in their decision. And we didn't include in the packet specific redevelopment. You have seen a presentation on their plans for that area. And so you now have a little better idea of what they're planning for this area. And staff recommended approval of this demolition. We have Pat Salome, the applicant. She has the architect as well as others on the design team available. Excuse me. I don't know. I necessarily think we need a repeat of the presentation we just got from them. I'll have to defer to Susan Randall on that. But obviously everything they said in the presentation we just saw is totally applicable to this site, which is the rest of the block that they were talking about. And does the committee have any questions for staff?
I do have one clarification in the aerial that indicates the extent that this application applies to. I assume at the southeast corner, the demolition does apply to the easternmost portion of the building. Okay.
It does. What this actually is from the county assessor's website, and you have no control on how it shows up when you click on an item. And I don't know why it is so off, but it does include that corner. And so I honestly don't know. Their maps are not necessarily accurate sometimes, but that is part of the buildings that are owned by the owner that the applicant has submitted this application for, and that will come down.
I just wanted to confirm that for record.
Yes, thank you.
Do we have any other questions for staff? And I realize that we have the same applicant on the same site. Do we have any questions of the applicant? Or do we have anything that the applicant would like to add to their previous presentation?
I think we're good on the applicant's end.
Do we have any discussion by the committee members?
Is there anyone in the public?
Thank you. Do we have anybody in the public who would like to speak on this item? Okay, so if there isn't any comments or questions for either staff or the applicant, I would entertain a motion on the item.
I'll move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the downtown design zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
I have a motion by Bates.
Rosy Trujillo, I'll second.
Second by Trujillo. Is PrimeGov operable currently?
Mr. Chair, PrimeGov is not cooperating. May we take a manual vote, please?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee Member Blatt.
Aye.
Committee Member Bates.
Aye.
Committee Member Brannon.
Aye.
Committee Member Copeland.
Aye.
Committee Member Sauer.
Aye.
Committee Member Trujillo.
Aye.
That completes the vote, Mr. Chair. The motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing this in future presentations.
Yeah.
So for me to be able to see the agenda, I will have to reload. So I am going to make an assumption that the next item is
The next item, Chair, is other business, and there is none.
okay.
And
So
then-
then we go ahead.
I'm sorry, the next one would be communications, which are the administrative approvals that
Okay.
we reported out.
And there's probably a list of those that are associated with the agenda. And absent any specific discussion, then there's no action to be taken on those items. And then the next item on the agenda would be comments from staff.
Yes, You got a good memory. You have a meeting next month. We have a couple of items on your agenda. So check your calendar and write it in with ink. And Katie, do you have anything you wanted to say?
This is Katie. All I will note is that just today I sent out an invitation to our new members for a scaled down version of our commission and committee training. We typically do that annually at the beginning of the year, and with COVID we held off, but we are going to do a training for all of the folks that have joined our design review commissions and committees over the last several months, as well as Arts Commission. So I sent an invite to our new members, but I'll also send that out to the rest of the committees if you would like to attend. You are more than welcome to, but we really wanted to focus this on the new members, getting people up to speed on the work that we do. And that's for May 13th. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Are there any other staff comments?
Not at this time.
Okay, comments from committee members?
I've got our meeting as a reoccurring invite on my calendar. I don't remember if that was sent to me or if I created that myself, but if it was sent to me, could we update the Zoom link information on that invite?
The issue with that is you all have individual unique Zoom logins. And Katie will have to type up here. That's because we're doing them as a Zoom webinar and you guys are participants. And so
this is Katie. What we can do, what I would say is, if you have the older one that says it came from Jennifer Swan, delete that. I will resend the invite to all of you today for the recurring meeting. And anything else that you have on your calendar, you can delete and keep that recurring one that I will resend today. And that should be our virtual meeting webinar information going forward through at least, the next several months.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is that we have a meeting in May. And then with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for your time this morning.